G'day, let's have a look at these Knipex cable cutters. These ones have the VDE grip, which means they're rated up to 1000 volts, so you can work on live electricity with this. Highly not recommended, but they've got that nice grip, so it will keep you safe and protected from everything. What I really like about the VDE grips as well and Knipex is they've got these little lips out the front, so when you're using the tool, it just prevents your hands from sliding forward. So the reason that's done is if you are working on anything that could be charged, you obviously don't want your hands to come into contact with that. So these little bumpers act as a stop and your hands don't slip forward, which I very much like. I just find these grips really nice and comfortable across the whole VDE range of the Knipex tools. So the cutting capacity of this is 15mm in diameter, so up to 50mm squared copper or aluminium cable. So the way these works is obviously the primary role of these is as cable cutters. So they've got these really nice jaws that open up quite wide, and then as they close, you can see the shape of them. They've got this little concave shape on them. So as they cut the cable, they're almost pulling it in towards the center or as close to that joint as possible to give you as much leverage as well and prevent that cable from slipping. So that's really nice. On some other tools, so for example, these ones, it's just a VDE combination pliers. So these cut really well. These are also really nice and sharp, so there's no issue with them cutting. Actually, I'll show it this way. But you can see this just compresses together. It's got those sharp edges, squishes the cable, and then eventually it clips and cuts it. So sometimes on these tools, because you can see how that comes together, it doesn't come together parallel. It does close, but it still leaves that little V shape. So if they're not sharp or if the cable is a bit slippery, what happens is that cable will push forward. Let's see if I can show that. Will just sort of get pushed forward, and then you'll lose that leverage when you're actually cutting it, because it's a lot harder to cut it up here than it is down here near the joint. So the really nice thing to see about these is, as I said, they open up, you put the cable in almost anywhere and they will hold it in place and that cable's not going to go sliding. And you can hear that difference. It just cuts it super nice and smoothly, whereas with these, it just does take a bit more force. And obviously it pushes it together to cut it, so this will just leave a nicer finish to it as well. So actually, comparatively to these, depends on what you need it for. If you do need a pair that you're literally just cutting cable and you don't need that insulation, you can look at ones like these. So these are a slightly different design, especially that handle. They're just dipped in that liquid solution, which then solidifies. So obviously that handle is different, but you can also see the overall shape of these is quite different. Now the cutting capacity of these two is exactly the same. So if you are just using it and need a small pair, then something like this might be the way to go. But if you are working with anything where there could be live electricity and you do need that insulation, then obviously you go for the insulated ones. What I do also find is if you do use these for an extended period of time, this thick grip is much nicer on your hand. So as you're cutting it all day long, it's a lot nicer because that pressure is spread out over a bigger surface area compared to these ones on your hand. So especially when you're cutting thicker cable, that can make a bit of a difference. But again, these are both rated for the same diameter cable. Now these have these smooth jaws all the way through, whereas these ones here, you can see they've got that serrated edge on them. So the reason that serrating there is good is when you are cutting, again, thicker cable, wherever you put it, it will grip onto that cable and just hold it in place. It just will not slide back and forth at all. It'll hold it in there really nicely. And I have also found that these cut even smoother than those ones. And the reason that is because of those serrations. So the way they dig into the actual cable, it increases that surface area of the really sharp teeth that dig in, and it just slices that. Absolutely no effort at all. So see if we can, you probably can't really hear that on camera and you obviously can't feel it, but this takes quite little pressure. But this one here just almost takes absolutely no pressure. You just pull it super nicely. And just that tiny little click, but just absolutely melts through it. So I'll just show that a little bit closer as well, those cutting faces there. You can see the difference. So these are, again, both rated for the same thickness of cable. The other thing I did want to mention as well is if you do need a pair like this, or if you perhaps want a set of something similar to combination pliers, but you want a better cutting edge, then this is what you go for. This is the electrician's installation pliers. So the cutting edge on these is exactly the same as these whole pliers. So these pliers here are also rated for the same diameter, so the 50mm squared cable, and they've got that really nice cutting edge on them as well. They don't cut as smoothly as these because again, that pivot point is really close to where you actually cut it. So if you put that there, the cable just slides right down the bottom, and the closer to that pivot point you are, the better, because then the more leverage you have here, which with these ones is slightly further away. So it does take a little bit more effort. And it also seems to want to push the cable up a little bit to cut it somewhere near the center, whereas these ones just want to be pulling that cable straight in a little bit more. But the beauty of something like this is you've got those really nice shears there, and then you've got crimps here as well, and then these sort of long needle nose pliers, and this extra face on top. So I did a video about this. I'll put a link about these other ones in the description and up the top here. So if you are interested in any of these other ones, definitely check those other videos out. But I just thought I'd do a little comparison of the Knipex cutting tools. So depending on what your application is, that'll probably dictate what you go for. But really anything of this that you go for, you will not go wrong. You won't make a mistake. These are just absolutely beautiful tools. They all work really, really well. Knipex is just awesome. So highly recommend them. So one more thing that I didn't mention is all of these tools on the bottom said do not cut steel. So they are just for copper, aluminium, and simple cables, not cutting steel. So if you will be cutting steel, then you don't use any of these tools, but you go for something like this. So Knipex Cobolt cutters. So Cobolt is compact bolt cutters is what they stand for. And they've got these really nice jaws out the front and massive leverage. So your cutting point is right in the center of that. The pivot point is right where you're cutting, and you've got the full length of this 200 millimeters or almost 200 millimeters to actually leverage that again. So these will cut absolutely anything. This cable is just obviously chop through, no problem at all, but really nice and sharp. And I'll grab a nail and just show you that real quick. So if you've got a nail to cut or any actual steel or anything thicker like that, then obviously you go for these guys and they'll just chop through that, no problem at all. Really, really nice and smooth, especially if you put it right near the center, no problem at all. So there is also a video about these just to show these off as well. So check that out. If you are interested in any of these, I've put links down below. So definitely check that out and have a good one.